What secret do you know that could destroy someone? Story 1. My coworker has been cheating on her husband with another man. She tells her husband that she sometimes comes to the office on weekends to catch up on work, but she's actually been going to the other guy's house. One time, she and her husband came by the office to drop off an extra table from their house for an event. I happened to be there, since I often work weekends. The husband gave me a strange look as she asked what I was doing there, saying that she never sees me here when she comes in on weekends. She's now pregnant. I overheard her telling someone that the baby isn't her husband's. She seems nervous. I'm the only other man in the office who fits the situation. I'm nervous too. Story 2. I was diagnosed with transverse myelitis at age 12 and have remained paralyzed all these 31 years later. What I never told the doctors, or anyone, until I was 19, was that I had been punched directly in the back, right where I'm paralyzed. I only shared this with 2 new friends outside my hometown. I suspect it caused a bruise or a blood clot that eventually led to the paralysis. I started mentioning to a sister and brother within the past 5 years that I had been hit at school. I'll never say who it was, and worse yet, we're distantly related. But that person went on to live a full life, full of love, family, and financial comfort. Meanwhile, I feel like I'm fading away. But I'll take this secret to my grave. Better that one of us suffers, not both. We were just kids, and I've long since forgiven. Still, people need to be careful. Our brains and spinal cords are delicate and can't be repaired. Not yet, anyway. Story 3. My aunt was 30 when she married a man who was 70. She wanted another baby, but he had undergone a vasectomy years before. She ended up getting involved with a 50-year-old repairman and became pregnant. She told her husband it was a miracle, and he believed her. A few years later, her husband died by suicide. In his obituary, it listed his adult children and stated he was the proud father of a miracle baby. I can't believe she would go that far. His children had to have suspected the truth. Later on, she lived with the repairman for years, but the child never knew he was the real father. What's even more shocking is that she named the child after the repairman. Yes, same exact name. She thinks I don't know, but I do. She told my mom, and my mom told me. I'm pretty sure my cousin would be devastated if he ever found out. He's an adult now, and his entire life has been built on a lie. Story 4. My uncle ended his father's suffering. He was 95 and in a lot of pain. Doctors allowed him to come home instead of going to hospice because it was just a matter of time. After a particularly bad night, my uncle, a surgeon, was called. He came over with some painkillers and gave them to my grandfather, who relaxed and didn't say anything. My uncle then prayed with my grandmother and a few others for a few minutes. When the prayer ended, my grandfather stopped breathing and passed away peacefully. My family is very religious and believe God took him to heaven at the perfect moment. I'm not religious and understand that he was given a fatal dose of painkillers. My uncle likely knew approximately how long it would take and timed the prayer to end at the right moment. Story 5. My best friend's mom had a baby when we were in middle school. We're all white. This is relevant. My best friend's stepdad is white. She's white. Her mom's white. Everyone is white. And then the baby is born looking very Apache. The mom laughed it off like, ha ha ha. We have some Native American blood in our line that showed up. The dad was either oblivious or in denial. It's a small town and no one said anything. Anyway, in middle school, my other best friend and I helped fix the school's computer systems. We got called to look at a bus driver's computer because it crashed. Lo and behold, he had a photo of the surprised Native American baby on his desk. The child looked exactly like him. That friend and I have never told anyone that we know who the real father is. Story 6. I was paid to read coworkers' emails, including HR, and report anything suspicious to my manager weekly. This was during a major recruitment campaign by another company trying to lure away our staff by offering huge incentives. At first I thought, no big deal. Then I was told to create fake social media accounts, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, to monitor connections and report any photos of illegal activity or similar content. Finally, they asked me to create fake profiles on dating sites and report if anyone from the company was using them. When it came time for annual compensation, I wrote down exactly what I had done. Within a week, I was offered a generous severance package. When I pointed fingers at my bosses, they denied everything. HR asked me to sign a non-disclosure agreement and offered even more money. I had a feeling this might happen. So I backed up an external hard drive monthly with every sensitive email I could find. I still have it. That company was involved in some very shady things. Story 7. I used to work at a computer repair shop, and I discovered some incredibly strange stuff about people in the area. The school counselor at the local private academy was really into some extreme content. Very specific, very niche interests. Not illegal, but definitely intense. Just to clarify, he wasn't attractive. He was one of those older men who stooped over and resembled a basset hound. This was in the deep South. Think Alabama, Louisiana, or Georgia. I was about to install antivirus software when I noticed the bookmarks at the top of his browser, and that's when everything showed up. I don't judge what people are into, and I wouldn't ruin his life over it, but it was a lot to take in. The creepiest part? When he dropped off the computer, he told us, "Watch out, there's some weird stuff on there." The weirdest case, though, was someone who had about 20 gigs of ebooks and PDFs that were just disturbing fictional stories. No images, but very questionable writing. Another guy had a slideshow background on his computer set to random images. So it would rotate between pictures of his family, landscapes, and then other images that were very questionable in nature. Story 8. One of my cousins, the dad who raised him isn't actually his biological father. My aunt cheated with one of my dad's brothers. First clue? We look like brothers, not cousins. Our fathers are brothers and our mothers are sisters. The second clue came when my uncle passed away. He left behind a letter which only my grandmother was allowed to read. That's where he revealed everything. My grandmother told my mom, thinking she had the right to know. My mom is great at keeping secrets, but she also keeps a diary. Unfortunately for her, I had a habit of reading that diary around Christmas or my birthday to see what gifts I was getting. That's how I found out the truth. Story 9. For about a year, no one in my department was being paid for one lunch per week. Our students would go out into the community once a week, and on those days, we weren't given a lunch break. I didn't realize until the end of the year that our pay stubs didn't reflect that extra hour of work. I had everyone in my department, just our school, not the district, write out a full year's worth of vouchers, totaling about $400 per person. It was denied as expected. But the following week, the district suddenly started scheduling official lunch breaks for that day each week. We never pushed it further. We didn't want the hassle. Fast forward to the summer, I emailed HR about something totally unrelated. The HR rep was extremely rude and, for some reason, included a message admitting that you were specifically told not to submit vouchers for unpaid lunch days, among other details. I don't want to stir things up because even though the pay is low, I enjoy working with my colleagues. Still, if I submitted a complaint to the state with that exact quote, I'm fairly certain that HR rep would lose her job. Story 10. My brother's ex-girlfriend asked to get back together with him after being broken up for a few months. A month later, she announced she was pregnant, and my brother, they were both 19 at the time, was the father. None of my family believed her because her sonogram showed a more advanced pregnancy than just a month. But my brother believed her. We tried to bring it up with him, but he wouldn't hear any suggestion that this wasn't his kid. So we all decided to be supportive. Having no other grandkids at the time, my mom started to get excited and bought baby things that the girlfriend kept while they were looking for an apartment together. Fast forward another month, and she realized that she was going to be stuck with a baby she didn't really want at 20. So she told my brother she had decided to get an abortion. My brother was devastated and asked her to have the baby and sign over parental rights so he could raise the child. She refused and broke up with him, so my family cut ties and asked for the return of the baby items we bought. Now here's the messed up part. She refused to return the stuff unless my brother paid for half of the abortion costs. Then she went out drinking with her friends, telling them she had a miscarriage and that my brother dumped her because of it. We told my brother to forget the stuff and stay far away from her. He finally did, and he's now in a happy, stable relationship. Story 11. Never told anyone this, hence the throwaway and tour. I never knew my father growing up. As an adult, I found him living in another country. I slowly got to know him over the years and was able to travel and meet him a few times. Interesting guy, but he had no intention of returning to the U.S. At the same time he left the country, his brother moved out of state and gave up drinking for good. Decades later, his brother is still sober, and my father still refuses to return. One night while visiting him, we got really drunk, and he told me about a time he and his brother were at a bar in the States. They were drinking heavily, a fight broke out, and someone was killed. My father left the country, and his brother fled the state and quit drinking. The next morning, he acted like nothing had been said. I don't think he remembered the conversation. I didn't say a word. There's no statute of limitations on murder, but it wasn't exactly a confession. I know the city, state, and year a man was allegedly killed in a bar fight, but I've never tried to find out more. Growing up my entire life without a father, I can't bring myself to find out more or turn him in for something that happened in the 60s. But I do wonder who else might have grown up without a father because of mine. Story 12. A woman my mom tried to help stole money from us. Stole all our birth certificates, other identity documents, my mother's original engagement and wedding ring, and an heirloom ruby set pocket watch. She can't really move out of our area. My mom was kind beyond reason to her when I was only 7 to 9 years old. I went to school with her kids. I'm 24 and married now. Because she can't really leave the area, I make it a habit to figure out where she works and talk to her employers. I disclose her full criminal history and have been the reason she's been fired from 4 different jobs. TLDR. She stole from my mom after my mom tried to help her feed her kids and improve her life. I spend my free time making her life difficult because I'm a vindictive person. Don't mess with my mom, Jenny. Edit. I'm that friend who's super loyal and honest and always has your back. I can forgive if people show regret and try to make things right. But I hate liars, I hate thieves, and I hate people who take from others without giving back. I'm the type of person who would sabotage someone's car because they harassed my friend at work and never tell anyone. I don't think of it as being ruthless. I prefer to call it pragmatic. Story 13. Guy here. I worked for a wealthy married man who asked me to fix his PC. When I woke up his laptop, there were emails on the screen between him and a young male escort describing services and meeting arrangements. With the terrified man standing next to me, frozen in horror at what I had seen, I calmly closed all the emails and acted like nothing had happened. I fixed the computer issues and nothing about the emails was ever mentioned again. Given how rich he was, I realized that if those emails were made public or sent to his wife, she could divorce him and walk away with millions. And I honestly believe he loves her, aside from the money aspect. I still work for him, and he's unusually generous when it comes to paying me, often double my usual rate. Am I blackmailing him? Not intentionally. I've never mentioned the emails or brought them up, but I guess he values the silence. Story 14. My dad passed away the day after my 15th birthday by slipping off a roof he was remodeling at his company's construction site and hitting his head. Everyone in my family was devastated, including but not limited to my stepmom, stepsisters, her entire family, and my dad's Narcotics Anonymous group, who I was very close with. 2 weeks later, my stepmom told me she was pregnant. Having no filter, I asked whose baby it was. She was shocked, but I knew she was lying because I knew she had been seeing my dad's brother. My mom was the only one who saw them together multiple times in the middle of the night after my dad died, and she told me immediately. That to me wasn't the real issue. I've seen stranger love or grief-based connections after a death. My uncle looked a lot like my dad, and I didn't blame her for finding comfort with someone familiar. She said the baby was my dad's, and I went along with it. This baby became a miracle baby, even though everyone knew my dad had a vasectomy 2 years prior, and now she was suddenly pregnant just 2 weeks after his death. I only ever told my youngest stepsister about what I knew. Together, we went through my stepmom's phone and found texts from my uncle saying things like, "I would take care of you forever if you'll let me," and "I could love you." A few months passed, and my uncle was living in my old room at my dad and stepmom's house, helping with bills, when she suddenly kicked him out. He came to live with my mom and me. We never asked questions. We already knew the truth. Later, my stepmom came to us and said she was going to sue the insurance company and that I'd get more money if I joined her lawsuit. I didn't, because money couldn't help me heal from losing my father. She went ahead with the lawsuit and eventually had the baby, my newest half-sister, though technically my cousin. My mom felt she had to protect me since I hadn't received anything after my dad's death. So we pursued a lawsuit as well. That's when everything exploded. We revealed that the new child wasn't my dad's and that my dad and stepmom were never legally married. They only had a ceremony. My stepmom refused to take a paternity test, and legally changed her last name to my dad's after he had passed. We settled in court because we just wanted it all to be over. But the secret I had, one that could have destroyed her, ended up destroying my relationship with everyone who was close to my dad and stepmom. Everyone sided with her, including my little stepsister. Now they all think I'm cruel and dishonest for trying to ruin her perfect image. But deep down, I know the truth always comes out eventually. I just wish people would be honest. Things would be so much less complicated. A few years later, my uncle, who I stayed close with, told me straight out that he had been with my stepmom after my dad passed and that the baby was his. He called her and told her he'd told me, and she replied, "No matter what you say, I'm going to believe it's," then hung up on him. Edit. Okay, just had a long talk with my mom to clarify what happened when we sued my stepmom, because I was 15 to 16 when it all went down, and the details were fuzzy. Also, I'm a woman, and those pronouns get confusing. I'm in my 20s now, and this all happened nearly 9 years ago. Turns out my stepmom didn't sue an insurance company. She sued the owner of the building my dad was remodeling. The owner was a close family friend, which is why we didn't want to sue him. He was my grandpa's best friend, and they actually built that building together back in the day. My dad was even born in one of the back cabins on the lot. Full circle, I guess. Anyway, stepmom didn't care about the history. She just saw a money grab. The owner actually came to us and encouraged me to sue with my stepmom, so I'd get something. He knew me my whole life and understood that if I didn't join the lawsuit, I'd end up with nothing. So that's what happened. We didn't sue my stepmom. We sued the building owner with her. Then the money issue came up because my stepmom was set to get 50%, and the rest would be split between my two stepsisters, my half-sister, cousin, and me. That's when my mom and I came forward with everything. We explained that the baby wasn't my dad's, and since there was no signed marriage license, I was technically the only legal heir. Obviously, there are so many more details, enough for an entire book. Maybe one day you'll see it, and this will have been the first sneak peek. For now, I'm still considered the villain and have been disowned by my entire stepfamily. But I know the truth will always be there. Happy Friday, friends. Story 15. When I was 18 or 19, I was seeing a woman in her mid-30s. She was in the process of getting divorced, and her husband had left the country. I was a typical young adult, horny, often under the influence, and not exactly thinking clearly. It was good physical chemistry with an attractive, confident woman. What else was I going to do? After months of this going on, and eventually her husband coming back into the country, she started seeing him again occasionally. I was getting tired of the drama. Lesson learned: avoid relationships with unresolved baggage. And in the end, she never got divorced. He knew she was seeing someone else, but he was too, so it didn't seem like either of them cared. I do wish I could have gotten to know my child, who would be about 8 years old now. But her husband thinks the child is his. They have decent jobs, a stable family, a nice home, and judging from the last time I checked her social media, they're doing really well. I wouldn't want to disrupt that, especially out of spite. Sure, I would have loved to be involved, but to be honest, I've been kind of a mess. I'd rather that child get the best upbringing possible. Maybe one day in the future, but it probably wouldn't be the right thing. It would feel selfish to interfere now. Story 16. Two former co-workers of mine, one a supervisor, the other an assistant like me, began a secret year-long relationship after a night out. Almost no one knew about it until I found out by accident the morning after my birthday party, which I had hosted in a rented flat. From being close with them both, I knew he didn't use protection. This becomes important later. During the 2 years we all worked together, our supervisor got married to her long-term boyfriend, a very successful lawyer. He easily earned 6 figures. They bought a home together, and he put down a £400,000 deposit on a £1.1 million house. About a month after they moved in, she found out she was pregnant, something she had always dreamed of. She insisted it was her husband's child. But it doesn't get more twisted than this. The same guy who had been with her in secret for over a year was later offered a job by her husband to work as his apprentice. Pretty wild situation. Hope someone reading this made it this far, because it really was one of the most complicated things I've seen unfold. Story 17. My girlfriend and I live with a guy I used to work with and his girlfriend. They're expecting a baby in about a month. About 8 months ago, before the pregnancy, the soon-to-be mom, who used to enjoy partying hard, had her group of friends over, including two guys who definitely gave off a rough vibe. One of them had been her best friend for years. My girlfriend went to the living room to ask her something, only to find one of the guys sitting alone. The roommate and her best friend had gone into her room to talk. My girlfriend went to knock but heard bed squeaks and moaning. A few nights later, my friend kicked the guys out after catching his girlfriend kissing her friend in the kitchen. We overheard the fight from our room. I still haven't told him what my girlfriend heard. He seems genuinely excited to become a father, but I'm 99% sure that child isn't his. Story 18. I know a guy who's the associate pastor at a very fundamentalist church. They have strict views on school behavior. He's currently engaged to the senior pastor's daughter. I also know his ex, who's friends with my wife. After they broke up, she confided that the second time they were intimate, he asked her to do something unexpected, something that escalated quickly into activities that would definitely raise eyebrows in his religious circle. For someone in his position, it was definitely surprising. After 6 months of dating, he even talked her into a situation involving a third person. According to her, she ended up being more of a bystander than anything else during the experience. Now look, I don't care what consenting adults do in private, but if this ever came to light, it could absolutely ruin his reputation, his career, and probably his engagement. Story 19. My older brother is best friends with two guys who are twins. A few years ago, one of them got really drunk and confided in me that he once walked in on his twin during a very private moment with another friend. Let's just say it was a situation that left no room for misinterpretation. As far as I know, the twins have kept this a secret. I'm pretty sure the brother who told me doesn't even remember sharing it. But when you observe his mannerisms and habits, it becomes kind of obvious. He travels to Thailand almost every year, supposedly just to get more tattoos. Yeah, okay. Fast forward to now, and the twin involved in that story, who's never had a girlfriend before, is now dating a gorgeous girl who's actually the sister of a close family friend. I'm pretty sure he's doing it to please his family. His mom told me how happy she is for him, and I honestly felt a little sick when she said it. Normally, I'd feel bad for the girl, but after meeting her once, she kept messaging me on Facebook and even asked me out directly. I ignored her messages and blamed it on the app glitching. If it weren't for the whole "don't mix personal life with family friends" thing, I probably would have taken her up on it. Funny part? I'm almost certain my older brother read her messages to me after I accidentally stayed logged in on his laptop. Story 20. A friend of mine committed unemployment benefits fraud for about 1.5 years. The irony is he's one of those people who constantly complains about government assistance programs. He says things like people on food stamps are lazy or that welfare is just an excuse not to work. He hates politicians who support those programs. Anyway, during college, he started collecting unemployment to help pay for school. Normally, you're expected to find work after a certain time, but as long as you're providing proof that you're applying for jobs, you can keep collecting. So he'd apply at places like McDonald's or Wendy's and then ignore their callbacks. He'd also apply for positions that he had no chance of getting, like senior-level jobs at major companies, just to make it look like he was being ambitious. All he had to do was show those proof of application forms, and the money kept coming. He had no intention of working, just wanted the free money. What makes this dangerous for him is that he's military and holds a government job now. If it ever came out that he defrauded the system, he could be dishonorably discharged and lose everything. Story 21. The wannabe cool kid I used to go to school with had wealthy parents who spoiled him. He came in later and spent 2 years there trying to be everything. Model, despite weighing over 300 pounds, artist, photographer, fashion designer, vegan blogger, you name it, all while burning through his parents' money at our IT school. He acted like everyone's best friend, but he didn't have any real friends, except me, mostly because he paid me 3 hours of minimum wage for every assignment, even though they usually only took me 5 to 15 minutes. I always made sure he at least understood what he was handing in, then rewrote it neatly at home. I got him to the point where graduation was within reach, but he failed almost every test, except one. He paid me to go in his place for that test. Obviously, that wasn't going to work, but I still showed up, got paid, got sent home immediately because I wasn't him. Thanks. And he failed that one too. He failed the second attempt as well. Here's the twist. His parents only saw my grades thinking they were his, so they rewarded him by buying him a 2012 Audi, this was in 2013, and a brand new apartment. That car was his pride. He showed it off, revved it at stoplights, gave people free rides just to look cool. He ran it up from 10K to 30K kilometers and treated it so badly that it looked worse than a 15-year-old car and needed constant repairs. The car cost about $30,000 back then. His parents also gave him a big modern apartment for supposedly graduating. He had faked the results. Eventually, he came up with a genius business idea with a friend. Long story short, the friend now owns the apartment, and he has to pay rent using allowance money his parents give him for being a good boy. He sold the car for about $4,000 and spent it all on substances and wild parties. His parents still believe he drives the Audi to work every day and goes home to a spotless apartment and a loving girlfriend. I'm sure they'll find out the truth soon, and his dad is definitely not going to take it well. Story 22. A former acquaintance once confided in me something that left me completely numb. When he was a child, he said he had hurt a family member in ways that no child should even understand. It began when they were both left alone together often, and it escalated over the years. When their parents found out, instead of stepping in properly, they told them both to stop, treating it like some kind of misunderstanding. But it kept happening. Over time, the other child became withdrawn and later struggled with addiction and destructive behavior. What horrified me most was that he didn't seem to fully understand how deeply he had hurt her. He couldn't or wouldn't see the connection between what he did and what she became. Their family eventually cut her off for stealing and acting out, but the root of it all was ignored. I'll never understand how their parents didn't intervene the first time. How could they continue leaving them alone after knowing what had happened? I'll never understand how anyone could treat it like both children were equally at fault. It still shocks me. I have no idea why he decided to tell me, especially since we barely even knew each other. But that day changed something in me. I remember walking away from that conversation in a daze. I don't remember where I was or what time it was. All I remember is thinking that evil isn't always some monster in the dark. It can look exactly like someone you'd pass by every day without a second thought. Story 23. A guy I grew up with has a really easygoing wife. I met her years after knowing him. She and I became pretty close after going through some difficult situations together. Situations that ultimately ended our friendship. Before they were married, though, her now husband had been messaging her best friend, trying to start something inappropriate. The best friend never told her, but she did forward me the emails. I still have them. No one else knows. Just her and me. I've never said anything to my old friend about it because of her own past, which involves someone else. About a year before she started dating her husband, and 2 years before I ever met her, she knowingly got involved with a married man, an ex of hers and someone I had worked with for years. When she eventually had a change of heart, she threatened to tell the man's wife. A week later, he walked into a family Thanksgiving gathering and took his own life. I could destroy their marriage with the emails, but I'd rather let the truth come out naturally. And if she ever finds out, I'll be ready to show her the evidence. One turn deserves another. Story 24. About 6 years ago in Aberdeen, I, being male, ended up living with 3 girls during university. I thought it would be a good idea. It wasn't. One of the girls, let's call her Gemma, had a boyfriend. Let's call him Ben. One night, Gemma came home after drinking. Her brother Stubert was staying with us at the time. By then, I mostly kept to myself. I was close to finishing uni and didn't really care what was going on outside my room. That night, I hadn't seen Ben at all. During a late-night bathroom trip, I overheard noises coming from Gemma's room. It wasn't anything unusual, and I didn't pay much attention. As long as I could sleep, it didn't matter to me. The next morning, I realized Ben still hadn't been around, and the only other guy in the house besides me was her brother. I started putting the pieces together and, well, maybe you've reached the same conclusion. Maybe it was a one-time thing. Maybe there was more to it. Or maybe I was wrong. Aside from the names I've used here, everything I said really happened. Story 25. When I was 18, I had a 17-year-old girlfriend who lived in an apartment building. On the same floor lived a young single mother with 2 small kids. My girlfriend would often babysit for her to earn a little extra money. Usually the woman needed a sitter because she had a date. It seemed like she had a new boyfriend every weekend, or so we thought. She was always polite, well-mannered, and looked respectable. She would usually return very late, around 3 or 4 a.m. When my girlfriend babysat, I was allowed to come over and keep her company. We'd usually hang out, watch videos, or use the computer. One night, while saving an image from a random site, we couldn't find where it had been stored. So we clicked on an image folder on the desktop, thinking it might be in there. What we found wasn't what we expected. Let's just say it was a series of very explicit photos from a private event that looked like it took place in a public space. It changed the way I saw her completely. From that point on, I couldn't look her in the eye without remembering what we had stumbled upon. Story 26. My ex isn't exactly thrilled with her current relationship in one specific area. We dated for 2 semesters in college. It had its ups and downs, but she was adventurous, and I was open to trying new things. So despite the arguments, our connection kept us together longer than it probably should have. When we eventually broke up, it wasn't smooth. She started dating my roommate shortly after. He had liked her for a long time. At first, he was upset we had dated, but he eventually accepted it. That semester ended up being a lot of fun for the 3 of us. But he's pretty traditional in his views, especially regarding intimacy. I was her first serious partner, and he's her second. They've now been together for around 8 or 9 years and are engaged. For a long time, she and I didn't speak. The breakup had been rough. We were cordial when we crossed paths, but since she was with someone I once considered a friend, I kept my distance out of respect. A few years ago, we reconnected casually online. By then, I had begun my transition. She used to joke back in the day that I'd end up being a woman someday. And well, now I am. Since then, I've become more open and active in alternative communities and have embraced a different relationship philosophy. Occasionally, when she visits her parents, she'll message me. Usually it's late at night and she's been drinking. She vents about how unfulfilled she feels, how her partner isn't open to trying new things, and how she feels stifled. I try to be supportive without crossing any lines. I tell her to talk to him, encourage her to be honest, but she says he won't listen. Depending on her mood, sometimes she reminisces about our past and wonders how things might have been different. She asks about my current life and relationships and wishes she had that freedom. She loves her fiancé and doesn't want to leave him. I believe she's just looking for someone to confide in. I listen, give advice where I can, but I never encourage anything inappropriate. Still, if he knew some of the things she shared, it would probably break him. I've kept it to myself, and I plan to continue doing so. Story 27. This happened back in the 1960s, and it still deeply affects me when I think about it. My aunt's parents were very devout Catholics. Her mother was difficult to be around, but her father was truly one of the kindest people I've ever known. He was a war veteran, a generous man who dedicated time and resources to helping people with disabilities, and a devoted father to 4 children. Their oldest son lost his vision suddenly in his early teens before hitting puberty. The family was desperate for answers and hoped to find a cure. Doctors couldn't pinpoint the exact cause. In their desperation, they followed a very extreme medical suggestion, hoping it would somehow reverse the condition. It didn't. As a result, his development was permanently altered. His voice remained high, and he never had the chance to experience a full adult life. He has remained blind, never had a romantic relationship, and has always relied on his parents for care and support. I believe his parents thought they were doing the right thing, perhaps even acting out of love, but their decision, however well-intentioned, changed his life forever. It's hard not to wonder how different things might have been if they had chosen another path. Story 28. Oh, my time to shine. So my immediate boss, we'll call her Anne, and her boss, my manager, we'll call him John, are definitely involved in a relationship. Here's how I found out. Anne sometimes talks to my wife. My wife and I both work in the same department. At one point, Anne and my wife went to another state to help open a new facility. They became friends. Anne would constantly brag about her boyfriend making $70,000 a year and being a manager at a facility. She never said where he worked, just that she couldn't say. Strange, but whatever. The next day, my wife called me and said Anne's boyfriend had come to visit her. He was hiding in the hotel room, waiting until the hallway was clear before entering. Anne checked the hallway first and then rushed him into the room like she didn't want anyone to see him. That's when I got suspicious. So I started thinking, maybe her boyfriend works at our facility. The next day, I asked around to see which managers weren't in that day. Guess who was missing? Yep, John. To be sure, I asked another manager, and they said John was out on sick leave for the week. At lunch, I FaceTimed my wife and told her I figured out who Anne's boyfriend was. The shocked look on her face when I said John confirmed everything. The next day, Ann and my wife went out for breakfast, and my wife casually said she knew who Ann's boyfriend was. As soon as she said John's name, Ann immediately asked her not to tell anyone. Now, part of me wants to spill the secret because Ann constantly picks on me. She's quick to point out things I didn't even do wrong, and I'm always the one she sends to other departments when help is needed. If I told upper management, they'd probably fire John for favoritism. It's happened before, and they'd transfer Ann to another location. But I won't say anything. Yes, I enjoy watching chaos unfold, but I'm not the one who lights the match. Story 29. My roommate and close friend had a toxic ex who kept coming back into his life to use him. She had a pattern. Whenever she needed a car, money, or a place to stay, she'd come around acting like she wanted to fix things. One time I told her to stop showing up because all she did was create problems. I told her that I always had to clean up the emotional mess she left behind, and that my friend had been struggling lately and was even on antidepressants. She got upset and told him that I was only saying those things because I was in love with her and didn't want to see them together. She insisted they keep their relationship secret when I was around. Despite everything, she still used him, took advantage of his kindness, and left him in a worse state than before. A couple months later, my friend asked me, completely out of the blue, if I would consider ending my life if I had a serious medical condition. 2 days later, he took his own life. A few weeks after the funeral, I learned, completely by accident, that his ex had been involved with other people during their time together and hadn't been careful. That's how he got sick, and it crushed him emotionally. She likely knows that I know, but none of his other friends or family do. I've never told anyone else. Then just 3 weeks after his funeral, she was already seeing one of his friends. It was clear to everyone that she had been a major factor in his decline. What she did and what that friend did still haunts me. Story 30. I'm the other person in the life of an ex-girlfriend who's currently in a relationship with a much older man. This man spoils her and her daughters with extravagant gifts and vacations. I could easily cause a major upheaval in her life by forwarding a few emails she sent me. Messages where she complains about how unfulfilling things are with him, saying that just seeing him makes her uncomfortable. She also tells me she still loves me and that I'll always be the love of her life. But the part that really gets me is how she believes she's doing all of this for her daughters. I'm not sure how setting the example that it's okay to stay in a relationship for material gain, even if you're unhappy, is helping them. At this point, I just keep my distance and let things play out. Occasionally, we reconnect, but I stay emotionally detached. She's technically still married to someone else, although they're separated. Her husband doesn't know the kids are living with this wealthy older man. The biological father is in the military, stationed about 9 hours away. She's told the children to lie to both their dad and grandmother about where they're living. A stand-up person, right? Story 31. There's a guy who goes to my college. He transferred from another school. At first, I thought he might be gay based on how he carried himself, his mannerisms, his speech, and especially the way he dressed. The jeans he wore seemed intentionally attention-grabbing. I don't usually notice things like that, but it was hard to miss. He came across as someone who might be hiding a part of himself, especially since he also acted extremely religious and was vocal about traditional views. I asked around and heard he was raised by a single mother, so I figured maybe he was just more expressive and dropped the idea. But over time, he started doing things that rubbed people the wrong way, like following a guy into the bathroom or staying way too late at a friend's dorm, being loud and disruptive. That got him removed from our group pretty quickly. Then he took it further, mocking one of our friends for a physical condition he was born with. He also spread rumors and caused division, which broke up our friend group for nearly a semester. This cycle repeated with other groups across campus. Eventually, he became a loner, and most people avoided him. Later, I found out from a friend who went to a party at his old college that he had actually come out there. Apparently, at one point, he was more open about his orientation, but things went badly. He was ridiculed and ended up transferring schools. Since then, he's been acting homophobic and doubling down on his religious persona, while also treating others in really toxic ways. The worst part is that his current group of friends has no idea about his past behavior, or that he's hiding a huge part of himself while tearing down others. Story 32. Not sure if this counts as destroying someone. Today I found out that my little brother, twin number 2, is gay. His twin brother, twin 1, and I were chatting about random stuff when he casually mentioned that his brother had come out to their mom, my stepmom, and that he had once walked in on him kissing another guy while watching movies. There's a 9-year age gap between me and the twins. We share the same father, but have different mothers. I'm pretty close to my stepmom, so I asked her if it was true or if twin one was just messing with me. She confirmed that it was all real. I want to be clear, I have absolutely no problem with my brother being gay. I support him 100%. But thinking back over the years, I used to tease him a lot about things like that. Probably because I thought that's just what big brothers did. Looking back now, I feel really guilty about it. I know I probably made things harder for him without realizing it. Where this becomes a serious issue is with our father. He doesn't know, and unfortunately, he's extremely close-minded when it comes to this topic. Just a few days ago, he went on a big rant about it to me. The twins still live at home, and I'm genuinely concerned about what might happen if he finds out. I don't know how he'd react, and that honestly scares me. Story 33. All right, so I work with this guy who is, without exaggeration, a complete and total jerk. I also grew up with him. We went to the same school, lived on the same block, basically crossed paths our entire lives. I'll never forget one particular day back in 7th grade. He got caught doing something highly inappropriate in the school locker room, something that no one should ever be doing in a public place, especially not at that age. After realizing he had been caught, he was so overwhelmed by embarrassment and fear of ridicule that he tried to do something drastic. He climbed to the top of the baseball field fence, tied his sweater around the pole, and jumped. Thankfully, or perhaps ironically, the sweater didn't hold. He fell straight to the ground hard. The whole thing was chaotic and tragic, and after that, he was suspended and ended up in therapy and counseling for years. Fast forward to now. He walks around acting like he's better than everyone else. He causes drama at work and treats people terribly, with zero self-awareness. And honestly, part of me is just waiting for the day he decides to mess with me. Because if he does, I've got that memory locked and loaded, and I wouldn't hesitate to let it slip in front of the right crowd. Call me petty, call me cold. But this guy is the living, breathing definition of someone who never learned from their past. Story 34. My college roommate displayed deeply disturbing behavior, and I still don't know if justice was ever truly served. One day, while messing around like a typical immature college student, I installed a keylogger on his computer. At the time, I wasn't trying to uncover anything serious. I was just being nosy and careless. But what I found changed everything. There wasn't anything outright illegal on his computer, but there were chat logs, long messages where he talked about inappropriate fantasies involving minors, and search terms used on platforms like Omegle that clearly targeted very young users. I could only see his side of the conversations, but it was enough to raise alarm bells. I reported everything to the police. I had a long conversation with an officer and handed over a flash drive with all the evidence I had. About 6 months later, I got a follow-up from a detective, but then nothing. Total silence. This was something I couldn't keep to myself, so I told one of our former roommates. Instead of focusing on what I discovered, he got angry that I had used a keylogger in the first place. Fair enough, what I did wasn't right, and I own that. But he went on to tell all of our mutual friends what I'd done, leaving out the reason why. As a result, they all cut me off. No explanation, no chance to tell my side. Just gone. Only one person reached out to me a little, but things haven't been the same. I lost every single friend I had in college over this. And the worst part, the person I reported knows what I did because they were told he deserved to know. Now I live with this constant fear of retaliation. But you know what? I'd do it all again because some things are too serious to ignore. And if you're out there reading this, you know exactly what you did. And I'll never stop hoping the truth catches up with you. Story 35. I know a married woman who identifies as bisexual. She's heavily involved in her church, has a degree in psychology, and plans to become a counselor. A few years back, during a rough patch in my marriage, she became close with my wife under the guise of friendship. At first, she seemed like the perfect support figure. But over time, my wife, who isn't attracted to women, began to develop feelings for her, influenced by constant emotional attention. This woman encouraged my wife to hide things from me and eventually suggested a polyamorous relationship. Her husband reluctantly agreed. I agreed too, out of fear of losing my family. I started therapy, worked on myself, and told my wife how unhappy the situation made me. Thankfully, my wife hadn't taken things too far and realized she didn't want that kind of relationship. She ended it. That's when things got messy. The woman began emotionally manipulating my wife, threatening to hurt herself, spreading rumors that I was abusive, and constantly trying to guilt trip her. She even told my wife that they should both leave their marriages and raise my son together. It was emotionally draining and disturbing on so many levels. Thankfully, my marriage is now stronger than ever. But I've kept records of everything. And if she ever tries to interfere in our lives again, I won't hesitate to bring the truth to every counseling office and church she's involved with. Story 36. About a year into dating my ex, she found out she had a medical condition, specifically herpes. I didn't break up with her when she told me because I knew it would have crushed her emotionally, and at the time, I truly cared about her. She would often talk about marriage and children, so I figured this was just a challenge we'd deal with together. In hindsight, I think she stayed with me more out of fear that no one else would want to be with her. As time passed, her behavior became more immature, especially when she tried to make me jealous on purpose. That's when I realized the relationship wasn't healthy anymore, and I ended it. She blamed a lot of people and situations for how she contracted it, even going as far as trying to blame me. But I had been tested multiple times, both during and after our relationship, because I've always been cautious when it comes to health. All my tests came back negative. When I told her, she actually looked disappointed, likely because she hoped I'd also tested positive so she wouldn't feel solely responsible. A few weeks later, she started dating a guy I know. I still see them around sometimes. She avoids me completely. Part of me wants to say something to him, but I know it's not my place. If she's keeping something from him, that's between them. Story 37. I have a cousin who's run for state senate twice, and he plans to run again next election cycle. He also believes that certain groups of people should never have been granted voting rights, including women. He hopes to become a U.S. senator in the next 15 years. In addition to his political ambitions, he's a traveling evangelist for a strict version of Wesleyan holiness Christianity. He's preached sermons declaring that it's sinful for women to wear bows in their hair. I'm a Christian too, but clearly we're not interpreting the same message. If I went public with the things he said, it would destroy his political career, his standing in the state party, and likely his credibility in religious circles as well. His influence would disappear almost overnight. He's one of the most arrogant people I've ever met. Almost everything about him irritates me. He's 35, but intentionally tries to look like he's 48 because he believes image is everything. He wants to resemble the classic preacher look. Every time there's a family gathering, I dread having to talk to him. Story 38. My brother has a serious substance abuse issue, and he's constantly online doing things he's not supposed to. I could easily report him, and he'd end up in jail. I was actually his legal surety for years while we waited for his trial. It was a complicated case. His ex came over one night, they were together, and during the moment, she reportedly said something that changed everything. Afterwards, she called the police. The legal battle dragged on, but it finally wrapped up last week. He took a plea deal, guilty plea in exchange for avoiding prison, but with very strict conditions. At one point, I confided in him that I had been assaulted in the past, something I had never told anyone before. I was planning to open up to the family, one person at a time. Instead, he told his girlfriend, who ended up spreading it to people I didn't even know. I can't describe how betrayed I felt, and I still do. There are so many ways I could turn him in. He's breached his probation multiple times with drugs, alcohol, internet use, and even traveling outside approved areas. But I haven't done it. Not because he deserves mercy, but because other family members begged me not to. That's the only reason. Don't ask me to forgive him. I won't. Not turning him in is already more than he deserves. Story 39. At our workplace, we have a company policy that allows employees to be reimbursed for taxi rides home, but only if they leave after 8 p.m. Each month, a spreadsheet is circulated that shows who took cabs, where they went, and when. We're required to enter a case or client code next to each ride for administrative purposes. I noticed that one of the senior lawyers on our team has a suspicious number of cab rides, most of them timestamped just after 8 p.m., like 8:04, 8:06, etc. What's odd is that she lives about 40 minutes away from the office, And I've seen her leave around 7:20 or 7:30 p.m., only to claim reimbursement like she stayed late. It looks like she's exploiting the system and pocketing the cab fare in clear violation of policy. And if this is just what I've noticed, I'm pretty sure it's only the tip of the iceberg. So far, I haven't told anyone. But if she keeps pushing her luck or gives me a reason, I won't hesitate to report it and watch her entire scheme collapse. Story 40. My wife's younger brother and sister were involved in a disturbing situation for several years. They were both teenagers. When their parents found out, their first reaction was to try and remove the older son from the home. But soon after, they discovered that their daughter had also been involved with multiple individuals, some her age, others significantly older. Shockingly, instead of taking legal action against any of the people involved, the parents chose to remain silent. Their reasoning? They were afraid their daughter would expose what had happened with her brother if they reported anything to the authorities. Their daughter, my sister-in-law, is only 14, and despite the serious nature of what's going on, no one has stepped in. The parents, who pride themselves on being extremely religious, have refused to act out of fear and denial. It's one of the most heartbreaking and confusing things I've ever witnessed. The entire situation feels frozen in place. No one wants to do anything, and yet everyone knows. And in a town like ours, unless someone makes a formal admission or there's proof, nothing ever gets done. Story 41. My wife's father has a mistress who's about half his age. I started getting suspicious when his phone kept buzzing late at night and in the early hours of the morning. He'd frequently walk off to take calls in other rooms or outside. I had a quiet theory for months, but nothing solid, until I started handling his bookkeeping. There's one house in particular that raised red flags. He's done far more work there than at any other property, and at suspiciously low prices. He's constantly redecorating it. New light fittings, repainted walls, new tiles, kitchen upgrades. The house is in an upscale neighborhood where people love showing off, so that kind of thing isn't entirely uncommon. But this house, it's had something redone practically every single month for the past 3 years. He's redone his own previous work more than once. He's even been called out to paint the ceiling of a walk-in closet, a tiny 8x8 space. He spent entire afternoons doing odd little jobs there, spaced out just enough to fill up his calendar. Eventually, I got curious enough to check his phone. It's password protected, just in case he forgets it at a client's house, but I managed to get into it before it locked. Sure enough, it was filled with messages and photos from a younger woman who turned out to be his wife's massage therapist. This woman sends his wife Christmas chocolates, all while being intimately involved with her husband. And she's also married to someone who likely earns more in 2 months than my father-in-law makes in a year. I told my wife. She wasn't surprised. She'd been suspicious too. We don't know if her mother suspects anything yet. Moral of the story: if you're going to sneak around with someone who looks like a trophy partner, maybe don't let them meet your spouse. And if you're going to repeatedly visit the same house for odd jobs, don't make it obvious enough for the bookkeeper to notice. Story 42. Here's another one. I work as a software engineer for a relatively small company, about 30 people. We've been having issues with a junior developer on our team who's been constantly slacking off. On my manager's request, I started monitoring internet activity to see how bad the problem really was and to gather some proof. For privacy reasons, the logs don't directly show which computer visited which website, but by cross-referencing the timestamps with who was using which workstation at the time, it was easy to figure out who was responsible for what. It didn't take long to notice a pattern. The junior developer was spending a lot of time browsing sites related to very specific adult interests and even shopping for related equipment online. It was detailed. But in the process, I also accidentally uncovered a few other things. I found out, again, through browsing patterns and timing, that 2 co-workers, both married with kids, appear to be involved in extramarital affairs. And in one case, there were some personal searches and purchases that revealed a potential medical issue, something that really should have remained private, but unfortunately surfaced due to the circumstances. I haven't told anyone. I gathered the necessary information about the junior's performance from my manager, but everything else I kept to myself. There's a lot you can discover when you know what to look for, and sometimes even when you don't. Story 43. I had a short fling with a British exchange student, let's call him M, about 5 years ago. Last year, he found me on Facebook and we started casually chatting again. Nothing inappropriate at first, just old acquaintances catching up. Then out of nowhere, he started sending unsolicited photos and videos. Not the kind you'd expect from someone trying to be flirtatious either. Odd, awkward stuff. I was honestly baffled. Then I checked the timestamps and realized most of the messages were sent very early in the morning on weekends. So, probably after a night of drinking. That explained a lot. I'm not single, but my partner and I are extremely close. We were best friends before dating, and I had told him all about M back in college. Since then, my boyfriend has been in on the whole saga from the beginning. At first, we found the situation a bit funny. Sometimes my partner would even respond to M's messages himself, occasionally letting him know it was him, sometimes not. But then M casually mentioned that he has a girlfriend. Not just a new relationship, he's living with her, and they've been together for 2 years. Of course, they're not Facebook official and living in different countries. I had no way of knowing about her. Suddenly, it wasn't funny anymore. My boyfriend and I both felt weird about it. M claimed he hadn't done anything wrong, but the messages said otherwise. His girlfriend isn't in on the joke like we were. I don't know what else he's doing or who else he's messaging, but I know that if my partner were behaving like that behind my back, I'd want to know. Now I just feel stuck, like I didn't do anything wrong, but didn't exactly do the right thing either. Story 44. When I was around 13, my friends and I would sometimes walk home from school with 2 girls who lived nearby. They were our age, just regular kids. One afternoon, they started talking about a guy who was paying them a lot of money to spend time with him in ways that, looking back, were clearly not okay. They said he was in his 20s and wanted to become a police officer someday. At the time, it didn't really register what was happening. We were kids too, and I guess we just didn't fully understand. If anything, we were confused and maybe even a bit jealous that they were getting attention and money. It wasn't until 5 years later that I thought about it again, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. If what they said was true, then that man was taking advantage of them in the worst possible way. It made me feel sick. I still don't know if they were telling the truth or exaggerating, but even the possibility makes it disturbing. That memory has stuck with me ever since. Story 45. My wife has a female friend, we'll call her Betty, who is married. Years ago, Betty and her now husband, Lamar, were living together. They had a child and shared a life together, just not legally married at the time. Then he cheated on her. She found out, they broke up, but eventually she forgave him. Despite everything, they ended up getting back together and eventually got married. Fast forward to present day. My wife had another friend over. She's single, and they were working together to set up a dating profile for her on a website like eHarmony. While browsing, my wife came across a profile for Lamar. At first, she thought it must have been an old account from when he was single. But with a little digging, she realized it was active, and very clearly him. So this guy cheated on Betty, got forgiven, got married, and now he's still looking elsewhere. This time through online dating. My wife doesn't want to tell Betty. She says it wouldn't do any good. Either Betty will eventually find out on her own and leave him, or she'll never find out and stay with him. But either way, she doesn't want to be the one to cause a painful disruption. Story 46. I know I'm super late to this conversation, but I've been holding this in for too long. This is more for myself than anyone else. Just to get it out. I'm in the National Guard. I'm 34 and single. Last year, a 20-year-old woman in our unit showed interest in me. There was nothing legally stopping us from dating. Our ranks were close, and we weren't in the same chain of command. She's smart, funny, and lives close to me. We started hanging out, and things escalated quickly. One night, we were at her place, and it was obvious she wanted more than just cuddling. But I didn't make a move. I had a feeling she might regret it the next day, and even though she was clearly open to it, something told me to hold off. The next morning, she told me she wished I had made a move, but also had a confession. A couple of months earlier, she'd been involved with someone else from our unit. This guy is married, much older, and was her direct supervisor. In the military, that kind of relationship isn't just frowned upon, it's against regulations. The problem is this guy is well liked and respected. All of my friends know him, and even my family has connections to people in our unit. I had no one I could talk to. I promised her I wouldn't say anything, and I haven't. The next day she had a mission with him. She didn't answer my texts or calls that night. When I asked her about it, she said nothing happened, but her whole demeanor changed. She started to push me away, and whatever was forming between us came to a quiet end. I'll never know for sure what happened that night, but I have my suspicions.